Welcome back to BigCommerce Learning the Basics of HTML and CSS. I'm Brian Natter, and in this video tutorial we'll be learning the structure of BigCommerce and how to adjust your template views within BigCommerce. So we're going to start out here in the Browse Template Files, and I'm just going to start with going over how BigCommerce structures their HTML. In the previous video, we discussed how HTML is used and how you can style it. So let's look at how BigCommerce uses HTML and styles it. So here's a consistent layout of a HTML default page, which is our home page, structuring their HTML, where they have their opening div, which has an ID of container, and their closing div. And then indented is the panel.header, and under that is a div with an ID of wrapper. And it's very easy to read and understand this the way they laid it out. You know that this div is holding all of this information, and then you can see that this div, if we go to look for the ending tag, is holding all of this information. So what's really nice about this layout is that it's structured well, so we can easily see what's holding what. How do we find what div this is and what it's wrapping? Well, what's nice about this is the classes and the IDs on this div can kind of give us an idea of what we're looking for. So it has a class of left, and it has an ID of layout column 1. And if we go down here, this says content and layout column 2. So let's take a look at our store and try to find this left column that's holding all of this information, our side category list, our popular vendors, brands, our newsletter, and our chat service. So here's our basic structure of our store, and we're looking for left column. Well, we kind of get an idea that this is probably the left column since it has our categories, our popular brands in here, but how can we really be sure? I'm using a browser called Firefox. Firefox has a tool called Firebug, and if you don't have this browser, you can download it, and you can download Firebug and install it, or you can use Internet Explorer, Safari. They all have the same tools, but I'm just using this browser and this tool for this tutorial. So when I open up this tool, what it gives me is the structure that we were looking at before of the HTML. If I hover over here, you see that this is layout column 1 with a class of left. So this is exactly what we were looking at inside of our HTML editor. And if I open this up, we have all our HTML contained within inside of this div. Let's do some adjustments to this div. If you notice here on the right, you have a class of left and another class of left. And what's nice about Firebug is that it gives you the styles associated with that div. Here we have our class of left, and we know it's a class because there's a dot, and then we have our class left, and it's giving it a background. And if we hover over, we see the background. And then down here we have another class of left. So why is this happening? Well, this is happening because it's being generated from two different style sheets. If you look at the right here, you have green.css, and then it gives you the line 114. We can go into this style sheet in our HTML editor, and we can go to green.css and line 114, and you'll see that they have the class of left with this background. And this style is at style.css line 353. So why do they put two different styles in two different style sheets? Well, BigCommerce tends to put the colors, the font colors, into green.css, and the layout, which would be the positioning, the size, the height, the width of the div inside of style.css. This is a great tool to be able to understand how to change styles and functionality of your page. So what I'm going to do here is I want to take the background outside of what's holding all this information, and there's this box around it. I'm going to take that out. So in Firebug, what we can do is just delete this background, and you'll see that it disappeared. So what we just did there in this browser that you're looking at right now does not change the look or the layout that anybody else is seeing. As soon as you refresh this page, it will go back to exactly what it was in the original function and layout. So what we just did there has no effect. So now I can go in here and I can add another background, and it helps you populate it, and I can give it a color of black, which a lot of my font is going to disappear, but you get an idea of how easy it is to change. So now if we want to stick with this color because we like it, how do we do that in HTML, in our BigCommerce HTML? Well, let's go take a look at that. What we're going to do now is change the style and the layout of our left column. And if you remember, it had all those styles in green.css. So we're going to go into green.css, and it was on line 114. And sometimes it takes a little time for this to load, but if you see here, line 114, you have our style and our class of left, and it has our background of FFF with the URL of the heart. So we're going to take all of this out, and we're just going to give it a color for the background. And I'm going to make this black. And we'll save this. Go back to our BigCommerce store, and we'll refresh, and this should turn black. And there you go. So now I want to change the font color of this so it's a little bit easier to view, and I want to take this heart out from our categories, and I want to maybe make this a different color. So how do we find where we can adjust these styles inside of our HTML? We're going to go back to our default, and here's our default page, and here's our left column. So within inside of this column, we need to find our side category. And here's a panel.side category list. So BigCommerce uses these panels as placeholders for more code. It's just easier to understand and read the HTML as you're going through it. So all the browser is doing is picking this up and saying, hey, what do I need to put here? This is a placeholder again. So now in our panels in template, we can go look for our side category list, and these are all the panels that are being used within our default template. So if we click on side category list.html, this is the actual code that's being used inside of our panel. So here we have a div, and its class is block category list movable panel. And here's an h2 tag, and this is a standard HTML tag. This is a heading tag, and you can have h1, h2, h3, h4, and each one of these could be styled a different way. And then we have a language file, and this is product by category. So let's start out by doing this. Maybe I don't want it to say categories. Maybe I want it to say my stuff. So we can change this file without having any effect on BigCommerce and how the way it functions. So let's go ahead and change this inside of our h2 tag to my stuff. And we'll save this. Now that I have my stuff in there, I know my h2 tag, and if I can find that when I go back to my store, maybe we can edit the style of this. And then we have another class, block content, and this is holding all of this information. And then we have another div inside of that one called class with a global side category list. And this is just a global is pulling in information that we don't have access to. So this is pulling in a specific class for this category. Then we have a snippet with side category list. And the snippets are pretty much the same thing as a panel. You'll find snippets inside of panels. And this is being used inside of snippets in template, which is side category list. We're not going to focus on that right now. We just want to make sure that my h2 tag is the color and the size that we want it to be. Let's take a look at our page again, and we'll refresh it and see categories should change to my stuff, which it does. And now I want to change the color. I want to get the heart out. So we can use Firebug again and highlight this and find out what style this is using. And this is my stuff here. And my stuff h2 has a background, which is the heart. And it has a color. And it has some padding. And padding, when you see it laid out like this, padding is 0, 0, so 20. This is padding at the top. So let's just change this so you get an idea of what we're going to do here. Let's make it 20 px, and if you see my stuff gets pushed down. So padding is to the top, to the right, to the bottom, and to the left. And they're giving this a padding of 20. And maybe I want to change this to a padding of 10. Let's see how that looks. It's covered by the heart. If we pull the heart out, that's exactly where I want it. So I need to do the color change, and maybe I want to make this white. Okay, and I want to make my padding 10, and this is found in green CSS 118. So I'm going to just copy this, and we're going to go back to our design mode, and we're going to go to our CSS, and we were already in green, so I can do recent files. And now I have to find line 118. And here's line 118 and it's left H2. And I'm just going to delete all of this and replace it with what I copied. And this will give me the style I want now. Let's go back to our store, refresh, and there we go. Now this is what everybody will see if they come to my page. Now I also need to change the color of this, but at the same time I might want to make this a little bit bigger, which I want to do. So here's the font size, and it's 1.4 EM, and it's held in style.css line 360. So let's see if I gave it a font size of 20 pixels, what would happen. And I do like the look of that. I want to keep it like that. And everything else seems pretty good. So I need to find line 360 in style. So let's go back here. Let's go to my style page. And let's find line 360. So here we are at line 360. We have our left H2 and our font size. And I'm going to make that 20 pixels. And I'm going to keep everything else the same. And now I need to change the color of my subcategories. So let's go find out what this is being held in. So we have an A tag. An A tag is a link, and it's being held with inside of all this. But all we really want to do is change our A tag. And our A tag here is giving it a color of 2FF. Now this A tag is saying every single A tag within our entire site, make it a color of this. But here is a class for that specific A tag, and it's in the left div within an li tag and then the a tag. So if I give this style, what's going to happen is it's going to override this style for our just basic a tag for the entire site. This is all the links within our site unless we give it a style within a div. So I need to find left li a, and it's in green, line 126. So let's go do that and give it a style. And I'm just going to give this a class, and to give a text a color, it's just a class of color. And we're going to give it a color. We're going to give it a class of white. You always need a semicolon after you're doing a style. So I gave it my style of white on my left lia, which is my div that has a class of left. Contained in that div is a tag called li, and contained in that tag is a tag of a, which is a link. So now this is saying any link with inside of my left li, which is an a tag, give it a color of f. So let's save this and go back to my store and refresh, and let's see what happens. So there you go. We have our class that restyled it, and our hover is giving it an underline. So when we hover over it, but maybe we want a different color for our hover, which I do want a different color for our hover. So let's go and change the color of this hover. Now I also have a really neat tool, and it's called Color Cop. We can grab this little thing. In Color Cop, we can grab and get a color. So what color do I want this to be? I want it to be a light blue, so this color here. So now I'm going to copy this color, and now I'm going to go back and make the hover state of this that color. So let's go back to our file, and here we have a left lia with a hover. So this is the hover effect, and I'm just going to add a color to this too. I'm going to paste in my hover color. We'll save it and we'll go back and we'll refresh, and now our hover state should be our blue, which it is, as you can see here. So you can see how easy it is with using a couple of tools and understanding how to move around in the back end of BigCommerce that you would have on some of the style. Now let's do some changes with panels and really make things move around our site and change the real look of our homepage layout.